Last night, the Carolina Hurricanes went down to Dallas and came away with a big overtime win, with Marty Necas scoring yet another overtime winner against the Dallas Stars. But this game wasn't without its storylines, as Frederik Andersen left the game after the first period. And we will talk about all of that in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs and Stars fans. I am Jared Ellis, and today I'm joined by Dane Lewis from Locked On Stars as we break down last night's overtime game against the Dallas Stars, or in your case, against the Carolina Hurricanes. But first off, thank you, everyone, for making Locked On Hurricanes and Locked On Stars your first listens of this Thursday afternoon. And this episode is, of course, brought to you by the lovely folks over at FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/locked on today to get started. How you doing today, Dane?
I'm doing well. Wish that the Stars could have maybe pulled out one of these two games between the Hurricanes and them over in overtime. Two really good games, so hard to complain with the product we've gotten for between these two teams this season. Had some pretty good games last season, and it's carried over into this year. And I might be getting ahead of myself, but could be a preview last night. What we saw could be a preview of maybe a potential Stanley Cup final matchup. And if that's the case, I would very much enjoy seeing a best-of-7 series between these two teams.
Yeah, this would definitely be a really fun one heading into this game. I know the Hurricanes, they are still first in the Metro Division, but heading into last night's game, the Stars were also top of the Central Division. These were two heavyweights going at it last night, and Frederik Andersen, he's back from injury, and that's who the Hurricanes elected to go with last night, which was a great idea, to start out with, but quickly didn't turn that way as he left the game with an upper body injury. As of recording 3:07 p.m. Eastern time, haven't seen any updates. All the talk today has been about the Stadium Series jerseys getting released. Obviously, you want to hear my thoughts on that, you can go listen to that episode. But this was a tight game. Obviously, overtime, but these two teams, they still, while obviously were removed, from that, weird realigned season, a lot of guys are still, with these teams, and they know how each other play. And that's a big thing. And you could tell in this game, they knew how to play each other, keep it tight. The Hurricanes, they weren't giving the Stars a whole lot. The Stars, same thing. They weren't giving the Hurricanes a whole lot either.
Yeah, I mean, it's two teams that don't always give you a ton of ice to operate with, and two teams that also can hold their own on the physicality side. And we saw that with the fight with Luke Glendening and Pesce, which after the game, it's funny. Luke Glendening mentioned that he didn't even really see what happened. He just saw Yoel Kiviranta go down and just decided to drop the gloves and see if anyone would oblige. So it was just that kind of game. And I think that there's there's connections all over the place too, with, of course, Brent Burns being a former teammate of Joe Pavelski, and also both of those guys playing, of course, under Pete DeBoer in San Jose. So like you said, plenty of connections on the ice of, a lot of these guys know how the others operate. And I mean, yeah, a highly entertaining game despite, only 5 goals total and a scoreless third period. I mean, it's about all you could ask for with teams like this.
Yeah. And yeah, I think sometimes people underestimate just how much, understanding how another player, another team operates, how big of a factor that plays into games. They'll just kind of see, oh, this team's record is this team's record is that. This team's going to run away with it. But that isn't always the case. And, one thing, we're talking about the scoreless first period. First period was not like that. Sebastian Aho, his first shot of the game, in the first 10 minutes, he's excuse me, Frederick Anderson was facing just one shot in the first 10 minutes. I was reading the notes wrong. But Sebastian Aho, opening the scoring for the night, that was a big goal for him because that was his 200th career goal, and it tied him with Eric Stahl in shorthanded goals in Hurricanes history, and he also took the lead for shorthanded points in franchise history. So that was a big goal for him there in terms of the history books for the Hurricanes, and just continuing to cement himself in the Hurricanes history books, and that's great. And also, he is now the 10th Finnish player in NHL history to reach that milestone. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, he's a guy that I mentioned on my pregame show, saying that he didn't play whenever the Stars and Canes met up in Raleigh back in December, like a week before Christmas. And, I think that obviously the Hurricanes did fine without him. That was another competitive game that went to overtime, but I mentioned that he was going to play a factor. And sure enough, the Stars, who were generally a very good team on the power play, they make a mistake. And Aho's not a guy you can turn the puck over to and give a ton of open ice. I mean, he moves with so much speed and finesse. And I mean, that shorthanded goal ended up being a pretty big factor. And I think how the game turned out, the Stars able to rebound off of some pretty odd goals. I know Wyatt Johnston's goal was, stolen off a faceoff, and Jason Robertson's from an impossible angle. I mean, you shoot that shot 10 times. That's probably the only time it goes in. And,
I still don't know
9 times out of 10, Freddie Anderson makes that save, or, Jason Robertson misses, because I think he was literally in the trapezoid, like, a foot or two behind the goal, and it just carried in. And so, I mean, again, just that kind of game with not a lot of space, and sometimes you just need the puck to bounce your way. And the Stars got that, and it was enough for them to get a point.
Yeah, and that's obviously a big thing for them. Still coming away with a point. And I always talk about these weird goals, and taking opportunities. You never realize just how much that can pay off in the end. Because had the Stars power play been how it usually is for them, they don't give it that shorthanded goal. All right, they come away with 2 points. You just take that shorthanded goal out of it. It's 2 points right there for the Stars. They come away with the win. There's no overtime. But that isn't the case. The Hurricanes thankfully took advantage of an opportunity that they were given on special teams, which hasn't been the case a lot this year. But I think a big blow for the Hurricanes was, of course, Frederick Anderson going out. And we'll talk about that later on. But I do want to get your thoughts, from the Stars perspective of what you liked from them last night. Obviously, you mentioned those 2 goals, and then stuff you didn't like from them, stuff you want them to improve upon.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the negative side of things, and I think it's pretty clear for people that have been watching the Stars all season. It's their overtime game isn't very strong. They're now 3-9 past regulation. I think they've only won 1 shootout. They've only won 2, normal overtime games. And it's weird because last season they were one of the best teams past regulation. They only lost maybe 4 or 5 games in overtime and shootouts, but the script has flipped this year. And I think it's one of those things where the team, while they have good skill players, and I think the 3 guys they started with last night in Miro Heiskanen, Jason Robertson, and Rope Hintz, like those are guys you want out there. And in theory, if you have those 3 on the ice, you are probably going to win overtime, or so you would think. But it just hasn't been the case. And I think that and Coach DeBoer talked about this after the matchup as well in his post-game presser, that there's just maybe a little too much intensity out there that the Stars are maybe just not accustomed to in the 5-on-5 format. And I think that there's just kind of now that lost confidence. And he mentioned, getting that swagger back and finding a way to get at least 1 to go your way in overtime. And then that builds momentum, whereas you lose a few games in overtime and you start to generate negative momentum, if that's even a thing. But I mean, they lost on Monday night against Buffalo in overtime. And then that, I think, carried over a little bit into Wednesday night's game. And so you'd want to see that get fixed a little bit just for the sake of acquiring more points. I think the race in the Central Division is going to continue to be tight, with Winnipeg only a couple points behind and Colorado starting to slowly, gain some ground and get healthy again. So you can't leave too many points out there. Otherwise, that could affect your playoff seeding. But once you get to the playoffs, I think the Stars will be okay with the 5-on-5 format in the playoffs. I think their team and their roster is much more built and structured for that. But the things I did like from the game were the Stars penalty killing. I know the Hurricanes power play, which to my shock wasn't ranked as high as I thought it was, but
No, it's
you know,
been crap.
yeah, 2 opportunities. I mean, you just think with a team like that, I was
Mhm.
genuinely surprised. But even then, sometimes the Stars PK, as good as it's been, has been faulty and given up some power play goals to bad teams like the Anaheim Ducks or the San Jose Sharks, teams like that. But I thought they looked good in those 2 opportunities, and I think it's just a good sign that they did play so competitive against a team in Carolina who has had a great season and is playing very well in a competitive Metro division, but also specifically on the team. I think Wyatt Johnston, who we talked about just a second ago, deserves a ton of credit for not just scoring the goal, but many after the game were talking about on social media that he was the best player for the Stars on the ice, and he's only 19 years old. And so I think
Mhm.
that's a testament to him and the kind of player he is, that he's being the best player for the team, some nights. And in this case, against a team that, is considered one of the best in the league this season. And so you get that from a kid who this is his first year in the NHL, dominated at the junior level, but lots of questions of if his game can translate. And now he has 13 goals on the season, second in rookies scoring goals, only behind Matty Beniers in Seattle. And I think, there's not too many questions or hesitancies about him anymore, like there were during training camp and during the start of the regular season of, okay, maybe he gets off to a good start, but is it sustainable? And through 50 games, he's had some ebbs and flows here, as you would expect a 19-year-old rookie to have.
Yeah.
But overall, he's been fantastic. And I think Wednesday night was kind of the final proof that we needed that, he can definitely hang around with this team. And, he's not the biggest guy on the ice. And again, Carolina, Dallas play a physical game, and he's right there in the thick of things, playing his game and not letting it affect him. And I mean, he almost scored the game winner on that spinorama play at
Mhm.
the end of the third. It just dings off the post. I mean, I think that the building in Dallas, the American Airlines Center, might have collapsed if he hit that shot. The crowd really wanted that one to go in, but still an incredible effort, an incredible game from him.
Yeah, and you mentioned the physicality. I'm looking at the team stats, from last night. Dallas really brought it with the physicality of having 31 hits in last night's game, and the Hurricanes having 18. And yeah, that was something that I believe Trip Tracy mentioned on the broadcast of how in years past, when the Hurricanes have played Dallas, whether it's in Dallas or in Raleigh, it used to get pushed around big time because of the Stars' style of game. It seems like, regardless of the coach, they're a really physical team. That seems like that is something that's just embedded in the Stars' DNA, regardless of who's on the team, who's behind the bench, whatever. And the Hurricanes are, able to match that now and not get pushed around as much as they did. I mentioned the hits of 31 to 18, but the Hurricanes, they can bring the physicality now as well, which is big for them. And you mentioned earlier, Joe Pavelski and Brent Burns, having that connection. That Brent Burns shot was ridiculous. Oh my lord, that was that one had me screaming in my chair. Yeah. That one was like, it was one of those goals where you're just like, what just happened? Because that he knocked the crap out of that puck. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it wasn't even like watching it, not really even a goalie screen. I mean, that's off the face off.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's just like you said, a beautiful shot from a veteran defenseman. And Jake Ottinger's been one of the best goalies in the league this season. And
Mhm.
sometimes you just get beat. And that's what
Yeah.
happened there. And yeah, I had mentioned before the game on Twitter that the face off battle was going to be important. I think going into the game, both teams were in the top five. I don't remember the exact placements, but in overall face-off win percentage. And I said, the winner of the face-off battle could very well be the winner of the game. And that's the case. Carolina was 59% and Dallas went 41. And I mean, that the shorthanded goal, of course, was big, but that goal as well. I mean, the Stars
Mhm.
not able to win that defensive zone draw, and it led to a shot on goal and, a goal, a shot that ended up going in and ended up being the deciding factor in overtime as they're proceeded to be no more goals in the third period.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that goal and momentum shift, and we'll talk more about all that stuff right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, The Hurricanes and Stars got more games coming up. And if you're wanting to place bets on any of those, FanDuel is the place to go. And if you're not wanting to bet on hockey or wanting to bet on football, the NFL playoffs are here. And we are really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one sports book in America. And that's, of course, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features right now to make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers can join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed. When you place your first $5 bet, just sign up at fanduel.com/locked on. FanDuel has all of your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. And again, whether you're wanting to bet on hockey, bet on football, bet on basketball, bet on baseball, FanDuel has you covered. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance for a bigger payout with a same game parlay. And it's all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So, football fans, hockey fans, basketball fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at fanduel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now, diving back on into the game, you know, heading into the second period, the Stars had the lead. They came away with that Jason Robertson goal. It was at 15-17 in the first. It was towards the end of the first period, and that was coming not too long after that Wyatt Johnson one, which was at 10:59 in the first. So the Stars are really able to take momentum on that back half of the excuse me, of the first period. So for Brent Burns to come out just under 5 minutes into the second period, tie up the game, that was big for the Hurricanes. I feel, and especially after Frederick Anderson going down, Antti Ranta then coming in to start the second, they needed some momentum big time. And, Brent Burns gave them some momentum. Yeah, no more goals in the second, no more in the third. But, I think that Burns goal following that Anderson injury, that really played a big factor into this game. I think that, people seem to forget the mental aspect of the game. You talk about, the Stars, with their overtime losses now, maybe being in their own head a little bit. That's definitely the case for the Hurricanes earlier in the season. And for them to see that shot and just how good it was off the face-off, made little bit of a fire in them. Like, heck yeah, we got this.
Yeah, I think that was huge, like you said, because you talk about how we as hockey fans and viewers can sometimes fail to understand or overestimate the mental side of the game, and especially for Ranta having to come in that situation, probably wasn't anticipating having to play in this game. I mean, that's not easy to go from sitting on the bench to not having a ton of time to warm up. I mean, he was well removed from the pregame skate, before puck drop because he sat out pretty much the entire first period and then had to jump in and he has to stand firm. And I mean, a lot of times that's not a great situation for a team. And then, he takes an errant stick from Mason Marchment that doesn't get called. I know as the game went on, the referees
forgot about that.
The referees just kind of let things fly on for both teams, I think, down the stretch. And we're probably doing the Stars some favors on some of the calls that didn't get called with the shorthanded goal they allowed. But I mean, that's just a tricky situation. We saw Ranta kind of, messing with his helmet and some other, I think at one point he was kind of shaking his arm. Like there was some speculation of, are we about to have an e-bug situation? And that would have shifted the game again entirely. But I think that Brent Burns goal did wonders for the Hurricanes in terms of obviously on the scoreboard, but also on the mental side as well of Ranta knows that his guys are out there fighting for him and they want to help him get the win. And Brent Burns, I mean, it's a simple play, win the face-off, shoot the puck, it goes in. But I mean, I think that was a huge point in the game for the confidence of the team.
Yeah, I really do as well. And yeah, I totally forgot about Ranta, getting knocked in the head, because he was messing with his helmet. He was rolling his head and neck, thinking like, oh crap, is he going to go out with an upper body injury as well? again, as of recording right now, haven't heard anything. We're going to assume no news is good news in that aspect. But yeah, I think that, one thing with the Hurricanes, going forward now is now you're down Freddie Anderson again. As of now, there's been no updates on whether or not he's going to be playing in the next game, how long he'll be out, whatever. So far, no updates. And I think that they need to really buckle down and get things ready to go. You already got Max Pacioretty out again. And obviously you have freak injuries both times, no slight against Max at all. Freak stuff, but that's 10 million or 9 million, rough 9-10 million there. Freddie Anderson, if he is out for a significant amount of time, he's already missed a good chunk of the season already. And then depending on how this goes, they could have upwards of 14 million to play with at the trade deadline. And that is crazy. Going into the season, they're right up against the cap. That's crazy to think about, man.
Yeah, that's it's one of those things where it's unfortunate to see these players go down. You talk about freak injuries, and you never want to see that for any player at any position, but that opens up things a little bit for this team that still has plenty of talent, plenty of depth, and could go out and make a pretty big move to solidify themselves as the leader of the Metro. I know it's a little bit of a tight race right now with the Canes and the Devils, but I think a big splash at the deadline could do a lot for this team. Is there a player that you have in mind or that you would want the Canes to go after?
Man, I honestly don't even know. It's not something I've really given a whole lot of thought about because of the cap situation. Because all right, we had Max Pacioretty coming back, at the start of the year. You know, obviously came back ahead of schedule, back at the beginning of January, but we're looking at right around this time of the year that we're at now would be when he was coming back. So we're like, okay, yeah, that's going to be 9 million on the cap there. So we're not really thinking about anything because that would essentially have been our trade deadline acquisition because it's right around the same time. So I really hadn't given it a whole lot of thought. This is going to be something I'm going to have to think about it now. Obviously, big thing, in terms of, getting someone that can score goals. That was why Max Pacioretty was brought in. Having lost Nina Niederreiter and other guys, that was why he was brought in to score goals. And he did in his brief time with the Hurricanes this season. But a goal scorer, and then maybe some more physicality as well. We talk about that fight that we had last night. We also had that massive hit from Calvin DeHaan on Jason Robertson, which was crazy. Because you don't see that from Calvin a whole lot. So to see a hit like that was fun. You could definitely hear the crowd on TV after that one. But like it's I don't know, man. Because it's a lot of cap room. It's not like, oh, you got 4 million in cap space or something. Like you got a little bit of room, but not a whole lot. Like the Hurricanes, heck, even with just Max being out, they still got a whole lot. I don't know what they do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to follow. I mean, I like this time of year with the trade deadline. Teams always just seem to make moves that you don't fully expect, and I mean, I think Carolina is going to be a very interesting team to eye with some of the big names on the market. And it's, the opposite of where Dallas finds themselves, where they're, kind of up against the cap right now. Not a ton of space just due to them re-signing a lot of their key young players. But, they could make a small move here or there to try to add some forward depth or maybe some defenseman depth. And, we're already starting to see some trades go down. I know Colorado and San Jose made a trade during the game last night. And so the first domino has fallen. And as the next month or so transpires, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more. And I mean, who knows? Maybe we see one of the big names, a Bo Horvat or a Timo Meyer, head to Carolina and really bolster that roster.
Yeah, both of those names have been mentioned in potential trades, and we can continue to speculate on our team's trade deadline moves. We can continue to talk about this game, things we like, things we didn't like, and we will do all of that right after this quick break. All right, folks, we're back, and looking at last night's game, we talk about the physicality, the offense, all that stuff, and we're talking about the trade deadline as well. You mentioned right before the break of the Hurricanes, potentially bringing in Bo Horvat or Timo Meyer. Both of those have been names that have been floated around. It'd just be what they would have to give up. I could potentially see them making those moves. Again, like I said, I haven't given trade deadline a whole lot of thought because of lack of cap space. Now you mentioned, the Stars not having a whole lot of cap space, and because of signing younger players and maybe making some smaller moves. Who would be someone you'd want the Stars to potentially bring in, whether it's someone on the Hurricanes or someone else?
Yeah, it's kind of, I'm in the same situation where there's not a ton of specific names out there. I mean, there's a few teams or, some rosters that I think could be interesting to look at. Like the Stars just played the Coyotes last Saturday, and I mentioned, on the pod that while it's not the most intriguing matchup in terms of the record or the overall fate of the Central Division, with Arizona being where they're at, that team is going to be selling at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And they have, a plethora of forwards that could, potentially find themselves getting moved, but you have to also do it within budget. And it also just depends on who and what the Stars are willing to give up. Because they're in an interesting situation, the Stars are, where they're just under $1.5 million in current cap space, according to Cap Friendly. But you also have a really nice pool of prospects that you could trade or move some guys if you wanted to, but you also don't want to give up too much and sacrifice your future for, of course, you want to try to win a Stanley Cup now. I think the Stars are in a window where they can compete for one of those with the roster that they have. But you also want to be good for a long time and be a team like a Tampa or what I think Colorado is right now, that's going to be making it deep in the postseason every year. So, I mean, as far as specific players, not too many come to mind.
Yeah.
I know there's been a lot of discussion about maybe Jesse Puljujarvi from Edmonton, maybe
Mm-hmm.
a 1-for-1 between him and Dennis Gurianov, because both of those players, we've seen the flashes from both of them before, but they both this season have been wildly underperforming and been, under expectations. But maybe a change of scenery does a lot for those guys. And, I mentioned Arizona. They have guys like Nick Ritchie, who's going to be a UFA. He's only $2.5 million, his cap hit. Nick Bjugstad, another guy who's under $1 million, only $900,000, 30 years old. Some of those guys are veteran players that, they might not be the craziest in the statistical area, but they provide some nice veteran insight to the locker room. I know Jacob Chikrin has been a hot topic of discussion across the league. Don't necessarily see him being a star just with the cap space he takes up at $4.6 million and the term. But I mean, if the Stars could manipulate some sort of move there to add to the defenseman depth, I think that could go a long way as well. So those are just a few names and a few teams. I know Carolina's a little bit tricky. I feel like it'd be difficult for the Stars and Canes to orchestrate a deal, because I think they both like their teams, and I think they'll both make moves, but I just don't know if they would deal with one another, with both of them kind of being in a similar situation at the top of their division, close to or at the top of their conference. And I think both of these teams will make moves, and the rosters will look different come playoff time.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And we're still a ways away from the deadline itself, so there's no telling what could happen. We could see something come out at 8 o'clock tonight about the Stars looking at this person or the Canes looking at that person. Like we don't know. This stuff can change every single day. And one thing I forgot to talk about earlier when we were talking about the game, Jacob Slavin didn't play either. Because he's out. And so that meant Dylan Coughlin was slotting in. That was his 100th career game. So big congratulations to him. But he's a guy, honestly, I think he would be a trade piece. Whether the Hurricanes did something with the Stars or the Oilers or the Leafs or whoever, I think Dylan Coughlin probably be a piece in that trade or trades, plural, whatever they do, because he just, you talk about, guys need to change the scenery. I think that's him. He's not, it's not cutting it here. But, we'll see how next game goes. Next game for the Hurricanes is tomorrow against San Jose. So we'll see how things slot in for the Hurricanes in that game, whether we see Frederick Anderson come back, Jacob Slavin come back, if they can continue the momentum. I think, big thing, with the Hurricanes in that game against San Jose is really going to be not giving up opportunities, because that has been an issue against San Jose. I'm not sure if James Reimer is playing right now, but I know typically when they have played San Jose, James Reimer has been in net, and he has looked like a freaking Vezina candidate against them because, again, he's a guy that knows how this team operates. So, and he really takes advantage of that. Again, I'm not sure if he's playing. I know he was dealing with some injury issues, but the Stars' next game is also on Friday against the New Jersey Devils, a team also towards the top of the Metro Division. What do you think the Stars need to do to be able to at least make a step back in the right direction?
Yeah, I think the easy answer is win in regulation, or heaven forbid, the third game of the week go to overtime. Find a way to win in overtime. It's the Stars' last game before the All-Star break. They'll be off for the next several days, and then even before All-Star weekend. So the most important thing is getting 2 points out of this game. You want to go into the break with confidence and with the win and feeling good about your position. And it's going to be easier said than done, but this is going to be the second and final meeting between the Stars and Devils. And the Stars were able to get a win in New Jersey earlier this season on the same road trip they played Carolina, actually. They got the win at Prudential Center. So it's possible. It can be done, but I think this is going to be a big test for the Stars from a confidence standpoint. They haven't lost 3 games in a row yet this season, so that's going to be on the line going into this game. And it should be entertaining, and I'm hoping they can get the win for their sake, but also I know it would help the Hurricanes out as well, and maybe help give the Canes some breathing room if they're able to get the win on Friday. I think that makes the point separation at least 4. So that's going to be, something I'm sure Canes fans want. And I know that's going to be, I'm pretty sure that's going to be Brent Burns' return to San Jose. Is it not? His first game back?
Regular season return, yes.
Yeah.
They played there during the preseason, and actually, no,
Okay.
San Jose is here. I just pulled it back up.
Okay.
They're here in Raleigh. That was right. They at the very beginning of the season, because they had a road trip at the very beginning of the season because of the state fair. They were out there. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for the Hurricanes and the Stars. I'm pulling up the standings right now because you mentioned of just how it can potentially affect the Hurricanes in the Metro Division standings. And yeah, if the Hurricanes, the Devils are only 2 points back. So, Hurricanes lose to San Jose, New Jersey wins, boom, they're tied for first in the Metro. So, yeah, the Hurricanes really do need the Stars to, come away with that win, or heck, at least, whether it be in regulation or overtime, even just holding the Devils to 1 point, that it's going to be big for the Hurricanes because of just how tight, this race is. Because right now the Hurricanes are 39-8 at 68 points, and the Devils are at 31-12-4 with 66 points. A little bit of a gap between New Jersey and the Rangers there, but the Stars, they also need that win as well. Because I scrolled down a little bit, you mentioned just how close that race is there. They're at 65 points, 28-13-9. Winnipeg's right on their heels, 2 points back, just like the Devils at 31-17-1 and 63 points. So definitely important games. What may seem like just meaningless games, right before the All-Star break, could, like you mentioned earlier, affect playoff seeding come, a couple months from now. You never know.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's kind of the crushing part of this past week for the Stars. If they are able to pick up 2 points in the game against Buffalo, in the game against Carolina, I think they're in a better position going into their off week. But you look at the standings as well, and the thing with the Stars is they've played more games than almost everyone in their division. Winnipeg is only a game behind right now, but Colorado and Minnesota both have only played 46 games, so they have those games in hand. And while the Stars are just kind of sitting around not playing, that gives those teams opportunities to catch back up a little bit, whereas the distance could have been a little bit greater. It's not too pressing right now with Colorado at 55 points, Dallas was 65, but Colorado, again, has 4 games in hand at the moment. I believe they'd actually play, I believe it's the Ducks on Thursday night. So by the end of the day, it'll be 3 games in hand. But nonetheless, it's a game, like you said, Dallas absolutely needs to win from standings perspective, but also I think from a confidence perspective against the Devils. And it should be a great game. It was a great game the first time these teams got together, and Dallas is going to be, I assume coming out with a little bit of fire after how this week has gone, and they're going to look to, go into the break with a win. And I'm excited for the break for them because almost the entire team is going to get time off. Only Jason Robertson and Pete DeBoer going to the All-Star game representing the Central. So a lot of the players are going to get some much needed rest. And then it's the crunch time back half of the season where, a lot of teams start to fall off a little bit in terms of the tanking side, but then teams like Dallas and Carolina are going to keep chugging, trying to be first in their division.
Yeah, they're going to both teams look to get a bit more of a cushion, in terms of, their seeding in the division. Because like you said, a lot of teams, that could potentially make a run at that Central. They got games in hand, and with Dallas dropping those games, they don't really have a whole lot of a cushion there. Should Colorado get hot, should Minnesota get hot, they could easily climb up those standings. Same with the Hurricanes and the Devils. Devils could easily leapfrog them. But we'll just have to wait and see. It's going to be interesting next couple of weeks, next couple months, really. We're getting into that back half of the season. I'm ready for it. You did mention it being you thinking it was Brent Burns' return to San Jose. It's not that. It's Steven Lawrence's return to Raleigh. That's what that game is. So obviously, a lot of Hurricane fans looking forward to that. Obviously, a lot of Stars fans looking forward to their next game against the Devils. Dane, where can everyone find you on social media?
Yeah, you can just find me at Dane_Lewis on Twitter. And if you're more interested in Dallas Stars news and updates, you can just search Locked On Stars on Twitter as well. And the podcast free and available wherever you can find your podcast. And, wherever, if you're a Hurricanes fan and want more info on the Stars down the stretch, should these teams meet up again, wink, wink, foreshadowing potentially for the Stanley Cup, you can find us wherever you find Locked On Hurricanes.
Yeah, and for you Stars fans and Hurricanes fans, of course, you can find the show on Twitter and Instagram at LO_Hurricanes and myself on Twitter at JaredEllis_96. Dane, it was great talking to you about the game. Great talking about potential trade deadline moves, talking about what these teams need to do, and look forward to talking to you maybe in the playoffs.
Yeah, hopefully. I'd be very, very pleased if we got a best-of-7 series between these teams. So always a pleasure, Jared.
Always a pleasure as well. I'll talk to you guys later.